am a miracle. And why do I say that? I shouldn't be here today. I shouldn't be talking into this screen right now. My family and friends should have said goodbye to me a long time ago because I tried to take my life. I was done. I didn't want to die. I didn't want to die. I did not want to die, but I did not want to live another day in my head the way I was living. But things are good now. We're happy. I don't have the anxiety that I used to have. I can play with my kids for the most part, within reason. I find joy in small things. I can identify when I'm being triggered. I am so happy and so elated that I'm alive. But I can't help but think of the ones who aren't. And the ones who are considering that that's a choice. The ones who are considering that it's a choice to take their life. And so I'm doing this virtual mental health rally for them. For the people that there's still time for them to find out that there's hope. For the people who think that the only answer is to take their life because talk therapy and medication isn't working for them. I'm linking arms with others because we want you to know that we thought that there was no hope. We thought that things wouldn't change. I thought that things would never change. I never in a million years ever dreamed that I'd be here talking to you today. But here I am. Ready to tell my story. Ready to share it so that if it helps one person, if this helps one person, but hopefully hundreds, that it's all worth it. I came from a family where mental health was really looked down upon. Mental health struggles at least. Everything had to be okay. We had to look like the perfect family. Everybody had to be perfect, but we lived in the perfect house, in the perfect town, in the suburbs in New York City. I mean, the only thing we were truly missing was a white picket fence. It was gray, We lived across the street from a lake. We went and we swam every summer down at the beach, and we seemingly had the perfect life. But I was being abused by a neighbor for years sexually. And a parent who raised me was emotionally abusive because of the abuse that they went through. And so it got handed down from generation to generation to generation because their parents went through things, right? And so, it tumbles downhill, and you have to have that person that says, no more. It ends with me. This will not be handed down to my family, and I won't continue this cycle. And so, growing up, I had people saying, you should go kill yourself. Why are you even here? You are annoying. I can remember in high school was the very first time that I tried to take my life. And I took a bunch of pills, and my parents found out, and they hid it. They wouldn't take me to the emergency room because they were afraid it was going to go on my record that I had mental health problems. And, my grandmother, she had bipolar disorder. And so back then, when you had bipolar disorder, there was one medication with one dosage, and that was it. And and the way they viewed her is that she shouldn't have problems, and so they made it very difficult for her to get help. And for my parents, that left a strong trauma for them, and so they didn't want to go and go get their daughter help, even though she had taken these pills. And I can remember being said to, like, why would you do that? Why would you have it so good with us? And, you know, I was hurting from past trauma that they never even realized happened, that I know of at least. And when I opened up to them about it, you know, there was doubt. That could have never happened. That, you know, and so that left a secondary trauma. Then in college, things just got worse. I mean, in high school too, it manifested in self-harm. It manifested in not sleeping, flashbacks, nightmares. See, the abuse that happened to me, I didn't always remember it. I remembered pieces of it, but I never remembered the full story. And when I tried to figure out what happened, I was told, well, maybe you're just remembering a bad TV show. Maybe, you know, you made it all up in your head. Maybe you're remembering a bad dream, and that is not the case. My body has physical responses to things, to smells. And I was diagnosed in high school with PTSD. And parents who didn't really understand what that meant. And I told them, I'm fine now. I don't need to go to therapy because it's costing you guys money. And I don't want to cost you guys money. I don't want to make you guys go broke over my medical bills. So I'm fine. I'm good. I'm good now. Like, I'm fine. Everything's good. And so I faked it really well up until I got into college. And, you know, I made friends and they knew what was going on. And I was hurting myself secretly, but not so secretly. And I would wake up screaming at night, and I would dissociate, and I would pull back from my body. And I can remember like looking down and being like, what did I do to why am I like this? Why do I do this to myself? What's wrong with me? Why would I do this? What kind of monster am I that I would hurt myself, right? And I just remember thinking that every time I would do that. And so eventually, fast forward, I kind of got myself healthy after I was in college at the time. And I was sexually assaulted at a party. And after that, I became obsessed with exercise, and I got myself physically healthy and somewhat in a mentally healthy state. Still had really bad anxiety, held up really, big walls, and I was dating at the time, and I would break up with every single person that I was with once I was with them for 2 weeks. I was done, right? And then I met this guy that I fell in love with. And I can remember, we met online and we fell in love, and he is the man I'm married to today. He is a sweetheart. I am so blessed that he is the man that I fell in love with. And we have 3 beautiful children together. But my mental health, I never really healed a lot of the problems that I went through. And over the years that I'm talking about, at times I tried medication and it didn't work for me, and we couldn't find the right dose. And it just, my parents were very against medication. So in high school, that wasn't an option. And so I met this man that I fell in love with, and I told him, I have problems. I tried to push him away. I tried to get him out of my life. I tried everything, and he would not budge. He loved me back, and he was gonna love me whether I had nightmares and screamed. And I would have these crazy nightmares, and I would just go into this thing that I shouldn't be alive and I'm a burden and I'm too much and I'm too much to handle, and he doesn't deserve being with me because he's so much better than I am, and it's a punishment, right? That's what I believed as truth in my mind. I believed it with everything in me that, he didn't deserve, but he wanted me so bad. And, I was so conflicted, and, we had really good times, but the hard times were really hard. I was really struggling to see my worth, to see why would anyone want to be with me when one of the people who raised me didn't even want me. That person would say to my siblings, "Why do you even like Mary? Why do you even like her?" Right? And so we got married and we had children, and I was going to therapists and going to talk therapy, and I would go in and I would talk about other things, and I would, but I would never get to the core issue. I would never talk about, and the main thing that I would have flashbacks about was this neighbor who abused me for so many years. And I would scream at night, and I'd wake up exhausted, and I have these like hazy flashes, and it was scary. I felt so alone, and he was the only one, my husband was the only one, fiance was the only one there for me at the time, and I felt so guilty. And so, we got married, we had our children, and I still struggled. And I was like, what kind of a person am I to bring children into this world being like this? They deserve a better mom. They deserve, just better in life. And how dare I bring these beautiful humans that I'm now in love with, right? That I love with all my being, with all my heart. They're my heart and my soul. That now I feel like these humans would be better off without me. And I had my first daughter, and then I had my first son, and the flashbacks were bad, and I was struggling, and I was trying to go to therapy, and if I could just find the right words to say, and if I could just tell the therapist what had happened. I can remember one therapist saying, "You're safe now, you're fine, everything is good. Why can't you tell me? Why can't you talk about it?" But every time I would go to talk about it, I'd feel like I was being choked, and my throat would close up, and my heart would race, and I just couldn't talk about it. And it was so painful that I felt like I was failing every single person in my life. And the people that I loved the most, these beautiful children that I brought into the world, and I tried so hard to talk it out. I tried so hard to talk it out, and I just couldn't even say the words. I couldn't even say the words. And so it hit rock bottom. I remember the day that I decided that I was pretty much done. We went and we took the kids for horseback rides at a local Tractor Supply. And I had been up all night and kept my husband up all night with these flashbacks. And I tried therapy for years, and I tried this and that, and I thought that talk therapy and medication was the only answer, and it just wasn't working for me. And so I decided in my head pretty much that I was done, but maybe I could figure out something. There's still that small glimmer of hope in the back of my mind. And so we got home from that. I had another bad night, or maybe I don't remember fully how this all transpired. And so I, at some point, decided I was pretty much done. And I had hidden Xanax all around my room. And then I got scared, and I told my husband, we need to call somebody. I need help. We need to call somebody. You know, at that point, the therapist that I was seeing was part of a program where you couldn't reach her really out of hours. Or I don't remember if I could have or if I couldn't have, but I don't think that I could have reached her out of hours. I'm pretty sure she was part of, you know, a practice where that wasn't something that you did. And so I reached out to the local hotline, and it was a Sunday. And the phone rang and rang and rang, and nobody answered. Nobody fucking answered. And so he called a different hotline that was the next town over, or the next county over, and they threatened to send the police, which terrified me. In my mind, I decided that meant they were going to take my children. Not that that's true, but that's what I decided in my mind, and I was terrified. And all I wanted was hope. All I wanted was an answer. What can I do? What can I do? I Googled things and I talk therapied myself to death, and I tried the medication thing, and so I was just done. And so I started taking the Xanax that was around the room, and everything became very hazy from there. I can remember waking up in the emergency room so angry at my husband, so mad at him. I can remember saying words that I regret saying to him. How dare you bring me here? You know, things that we've had to work through because I was just so upset because I was a burden to him and I was doing him a favor. I was doing him a favor that I would no longer be here. That's how I felt, from every inch of me. And so they made me sign the papers. I can remember signing the papers that I was gonna sign myself in, because if I didn't sign myself in, then I had to do a mandatory 30-day stay. And so I believe it was like a 48-hour or 72-hour, I think it was 72 hours that I had to stay in the behavioral science unit of a hospital near here. It's the psych ward, and they take away your phone. They, you know, and not all places when you go to seek help, psychiatric help, but these BSUs are, if you're seeking help, definitely go to a hospital, not a BSU, is my suggestion. My personal suggestion. And they took your phone. They, you know, you stay in there for a couple days, and they force feed you medication without ever looking at your brain, without ever really truly evaluating other than, you know, what's your symptoms. It's kind of like saying, I feel like I have a heart attack. I feel like I'm having a heart attack. Oh, okay, here's some nitroglycerin. Here's some heart attack medication or whatever. I'm not a doctor, but like, here's some heart attack medication. They don't even look at your brain. They don't even see what chemicals my brain's putting out. They don't even do any blood tests, right? And they force feed you medication, and after 3 days, if they think you're good, they'll let you go. And I mean, I was as typical as a person comes. I don't like using the word normal, but I was pretty... They thought I was a nurse at certain points, because you can wear your own clothes there if you have any. And it's just, you're just kind of a number, and they push you through, and there was no solutions, no answers. And it was scary, you know. It was so scary, and it was more scary going home. Because at that point, nobody knew. Nobody knew I was struggling. Nobody knew about my mental health. It wasn't a topic that I talked about. I ran a really successful LuLaRoe business, which is a clothing boutique from my house. And I had a following, a small following and a small customer base. And I told my husband, I said, share it with them. Share it with them, because I'm done. I'm not living another day the way that I've lived before, and I'm not doing this alone anymore. This stigma is mine that I've carried, that somebody else handed to me, and I don't want it. I don't want the stigma, so I'm just not going to carry it for myself. If other people believe that there's a stigma, then fine, but I'm going to share my story because I know I'm not the only person suffering. And so when I got home, I went online and I shared what I went through, and I got so many Me Too's and so many I've been there, you can do this. I got so much support, and it's so important. Don't hide. Don't hide. It's okay to not be okay. It's just not okay to take your life. And so I still didn't have a solution, and they put me on this medication, and it just wasn't working for me. And then I ended up pregnant with our third child, and I didn't know what to do because nobody gave me a solution. Nobody gave me a roadmap. And that's what I'm trying to do with this. I'm trying to give people a roadmap and say, see, look, so many people are doing these things. Nobody frowns upon medication. Nobody's saying that medication is bad. Nobody's shaming you. What we're saying is, if it's not working for you, if what you're doing isn't working for you, if it's not healing you, because healing is possible. And that we hold things from 0 to 6 that we don't even realize are there. And there are ways to release that. And so what happened was, a friend came to visit me, and she said, have you ever heard of a therapy called EMDR? And I was like, no, I have never heard of a therapy called EMDR. And she goes, so she shares her story with me about how she had her son prematurely and how all these things were wrong with him, and it left her with PTSD. And so a friend of hers suggested EMDR 25 years ago, and she met with this therapist locally, and she didn't know if he still, did the therapy. And she said she held these things that buzzed on her hands, and she closed her eyes and she did this therapy. And I was like, oh, that sounds weird. I mean, I guess I could try, like, if you're saying it worked for you, then, and she, that day, I will always be grateful for her, because that day she saved my life, because she planted a seed in my mind. And that's why I'm sharing my story, because I want to plant a seed in your mind, that if you know somebody struggling, or if you are the person struggling, that there's hope, and it's not just talk therapy, and it's not just medication. There's true, real hope to live your life free from your mind. And especially if you are really struggling. And so I started doing some research about EMDR, and the first thing that popped up was EMDR, PTSD, and veterans. And so I watched this video of these veterans talking about how EMDR saved their life, and how they came home from war and they had all these terrible memories, and how it worked and how they helped them reprocess it. And so I went to Google and I found the first few EMDR therapists that I could find. And I remember, I think it took me about a week to call, because I was terrified, because in my mind, who was I without my trauma, right? And that's an interesting part, is that who are we when we don't hold our trauma? Who are we when we don't identify by this trauma anymore? And so, you have to be ready to crack your egg. You have to be ready to face your trauma. And reprocessing it sounds super scary, but the part that I didn't understand is, when you're reliving your trauma, you're very much in your limbic side of your brain. You're in your fight or flight. You're in that animal version of your brain. When you reprocess your trauma, it brings in both sides of your brain to store the memory in the right and proper area of your brain, and it opens up neural pathways in your brain. So they say that most PTSD from war is cured within 12 sessions. This is what I've heard with this therapy. And so I found this therapy and I started, and I have had a lot of trauma. So it's taken me years of this therapy, but in one session I was able to see, because she took a small trauma and showed me how it works, I was able to see how reduced my emotions were. And I was able to logically see that in that situation, that, you know, what happened, and that I wasn't to blame for this certain situation that I reprocessed. And so I started tackling different traumas, and it was trauma after trauma. And I can remember thinking, this is the coolest thing ever. How do people not know about this? But it's cured me of my fear of going in restaurants. It's cured me of my fear of going in movie theaters, because that was on the same neural network of feeling fear when I was being abused. It's cured me of my anger outbursts towards my husband and my children. It's cured me of so many of my triggers. And back when I was in college, tell a little story. I was sitting at the computer, and I suddenly felt a extreme pain in my stomach. And I started screaming, and I started crying, and I was grabbing my stomach, and I couldn't breathe, and my face was red, and my sister came to my side, and one of my parents was like, "That's what you get for eating all the buffalo wings in the refrigerator." And I was like, "I don't think this is indigestion. Like, I think like something is wrong with me. Could you please take me to the hospital?" And that person would not take me to the hospital. I was screaming and crying. My sister was like, "I think there's something really wrong with her. Like, you need to take her to the hospital. I think it's a burst ovarian cyst. Like, you need to take her in." She goes, "I'll take you to the doctor tomorrow if you're still in pain." It's like, okay. So I'm screaming and crying all night in pain. She takes me to the doctor. He takes one look at me. He says, "Take her to the emergency room and get her to a hospital. Like, this is legit, like, pain, and I don't know why you waited so long." And so they took me to the hospital, and for 3 days I was on morphine, and I was in so much pain, and they did exploratory surgery, and they found out that I had a burst ovarian cyst that was bleeding into my stomach that was causing severe pain. And so after that, I was thinking about, like, I love buffalo wings. They're my favorite food in the whole entire world, okay? Like, I love buffalo wings. They are, like, you don't understand. Wing night in our house, it's a thing. Like, the kids know, and they'll say, "When I'm older, I'm going to eat buffalo wings like mommy and daddy." Like, it's a legit thing in our house. Love the celery, love the blue cheese. Our traumas take away our buffalo wings. And these therapies and techniques allow us to take our buffalo wings back. Take back your buffalo wings. Don't live a half-lived life of avoidance because of the things that trigger you. And don't stop till you're done. I did EMDR. I did yoga at home. Yoga changes your brain. Look up some videos on it. It's amazing. Opens neural networks in our brains. There's science behind it. Essential oils. I used essential oils, and I paired affirmations. You can't go to the gym once a week and expect to change, right? Like, there's so many tools. And I know if somebody had just given me an outline, and maybe they did, and maybe this is just going to make you turn 1 degree and allow you just to change just a little bit. But there is hope. There is so much hope. And I wouldn't be standing here today if there wasn't. And there are so many like me. I have like 8 or 9 friends that I've sent to the same therapy, and they're like, "Holy moly, like, this is the best thing that we ever did." And they're taking back their buffalo wings. They're taking back the things in their life that they weren't able to enjoy. Do not live a half-lived life of avoidance of the things that could bring you joy. You deserve joy. You deserve peace. It's time to heal. It's time to take back your buffalo wings.